So as a business person, and especially in marketing, it becomes extremely important for us to find a segment of customers that a company can be profitable off of. Successful companies find that the majority of their revenue comes from these customers who make repeat purchases. In this case, we are, however, looking at a data set of a non-profit charity seeking to maximize the profitability of their donations. The majority of its donations are from one-time donors, primarily in the holiday season, and we want to find ways for the company to be able to increase the amount of repeat donations that it receives. In our data set, we tracked the activity of 21,000 donators between the years of 1993 and 2003, and within the data set, there are 73,209 individual transactions. In order to solve this business situation that our nonprofit charity is facing, we want to be able to explore scenarios for them to reduce their costs. In addition to this, we want to be able to find out where it is that they are losing money, especially from sending unanswered appeals for donations to unresponsive people. We will be doing so using geographical data and presenting it through visuals with information on which states that they should be focusing on and which states aren't as profitable to them.
Now here's our data set in SAP. First we have our customer ID column right here. And customer ID represents a customer, but a customer ID can be repeated several times. And the donor zip column is the zip code that the customer is actually donating from. And here we have the year column, which represents the year that appeal has been made to a customer. And the number of appeals represents how many appeals have been made to a specific year and to a specific customer. And the value of donation represents the amount of money that was potentially donated when an appeal has been made. And the cost of appeals represents the cost to appeal to a specific customer. And we also have a lot of geographic columns such as city, region, and whatnot. Oops. And another thing to note is that we also have the estimated, right here, the estimated zip population, which estimates the population per zip code that the customer donates from. Furthermore, we have made new columns to further describe our data. So number one, we have a total inactive column, which represents how many people are inactive within a zip code. Two, we have active and inactive, and this tells us if a specific customer has been inactive for at least 2 consecutive years. We also have profitability, which tells us how profitable a customer is. And 4, we have cost per appeal, which is the total cost of appeals divided by the total number of appeals for a specific customer. And also, I forgot to mention, this is basically the number of donations for the specific year right here. That's it.
So in this visual, we're looking at total inactive customers in a region. The way that we dub them inactive is if they did not make a donation for 2 consecutive years. And then we separated those customers by zip code, which gave us these results. What we can see here is that Arizona, California, New Mexico, Missouri, Tennessee, Florida, New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York are the most inactive states in the United States. And what we can also notice about that is that they do have the largest populations. So obviously we're losing money by sending appeals to these customers that are inactive in these states. And that's how we can increase our profitability for our whole business plan as a whole, is by looking at those customers, taking the total cost of appeals that we have lost, and subtracting that from our profitability or reallocating them to better customers. And that's what you can see over here. We have the total cost of appeals in that region for inactive customers. So we filtered out the active customers and made it so it's just looking at the sum of cost of appeals for inactive customers, and we're comparing it to the profitability. So if you can see here, if you take this cost of appeals and add it to the profitability, that would be how much more we're making if we weren't to send it to these inactive customers. Some of these are relatively low, but they're proportional to each other, like New Mexico has a very low cost of appeals, but also has very low profitability, so anything would really help them with that. And Tennessee as well, you can see the same thing. And then, so we want to illustrate that by showing you this. We made a stacked bar chart with profitability over cost of appeals, which it just pretty much shows the total it would be if you weren't to send it to those inactive customers. And this just shows our potential profitability if the company does sort out the inactive customers and stop sending them appeals.
Here we have the cities that have the most inactive people. The color red right here represents that there are basically a lot of inactive people, while green right here, or these green cities, represent that there's only a few inactive people. So if we decrease our number of appeals to donators who are inactive in these cities, or create a more effective campaign to capture inactive people, we can increase profitability by decreasing our cost of appeals. So therefore, this increases our profitability.
So up next, we're going to take a look at where our active and inactive customers are. So when we look at each variable in here, we coded this section for every inactive customer to be represented by a 1 in our data set, and all the active customers to be represented by a 0. So as we can see here, there are 65,000 cases of inactive customers and around 8,000 of active customers. This graph shows where these 8,000 active customers lay. So we see that the dark green ones in here are the most the highest sum of active customers. So we want to specifically send out more appeals to people in California, Texas, Illinois, Ohio, New York, Massachusetts, New Jersey, North Carolina, and Florida. And if we compare this chart to the first one that we had of total inactive regions, we see that some of these states overlap, like California, and Texas is slightly inactive, but we want to continue focusing on these large states because it has a high number of active consumers who will continue to donate, and the reason for that is it has a high population. So while there is a lot of people who are inactive, there are a good amount of people who are active, and we should focus our efforts on finding out those active people and improving our processes to avoid sending them to inactives. So in summary, what we found was to increase our profits, we need to improve our business processes and stop wasting money on sending appeals to people if we know that they are only going to be a one-time donator. Future opportunities that we thought we could research would be if it's possible to change the way that we're sending our appeals, so the type of appeals that we're sending and like the form that we're sending it through, and then we want to see if these different campaigns would be more effective or less effective in order to get a higher response rate. And limitations to our data are we can't see that if our charity used the same appeals on everybody, what the appeals look like, or even the psychographic of our donators. This limits us to looking at the profitability of only cities instead of which segments of people would be the best ones to send appeals to.